She was beautiful, but it wasn't her beauty that stopped time. It was the silent pain that made the world hesitate before touching her. There was something in her gaze that seemed to carry all the stories no one wanted to hear. A calm glow, yet full of memories that never healed. She was the kind of woman who seemed untouchable, and perhaps she was. Not out of pride, but out of survival. Because before she learned to protect herself, she had to learn to bleed. No one notices the exact moment when the soul breaks. It happens in silence, sometimes in a cold word, other times in a love that promised to stay but left when it was needed most. With her, it was an accumulation, small absences, small oversights, small deaths, and that was how her heart became a territory of delicate ruins. Each piece still shone, but the whole was no longer the same. And yet, even broken, she walked with an elegance that confused those who saw her. It was strength disguised as calm. It was resistance disguised as indifference. Men watched her as if she were an enigma. They wanted to decipher her coldness, break down her defenses, discover what lay behind that serenity. Some called her mysterious, others distant. But no one noticed the obvious. She wasn't trying to be difficult. She was just tired of being hurt. She had learned that opening her heart to the world is a risky act, and every risk needs a limit. She had already given her best to those who didn't know how to hold on to it. She had already believed in promises made by lips that never knew how to sustain what they said. Now, she just watches. And she watches long before she allows herself to feel. Carl Jung said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And maybe that was what she was living. A cycle of repetitions, encounters, and missed encounters that always led her to the same place. The mirror. The mirror where there were no more excuses, no more illusions, no more guilt. Just the naked truth of what she had become. It was there that she realized it wasn't the world that was destroying her. It was she who insisted on not seeing herself as a whole. Her beauty was never in her face, but in the fact that she continued to believe, even after everything. Deep down, her struggle was not against others, but against her own fear of believing again. There is something almost divine about a woman who decides to rebuild herself alone. It's like watching chaos create form. She starts small with simple gestures. She sleeps better, talks less, observes more. Then slowly, she rediscovers silence. She learns that peace is not the absence of pain, but the maturity not to turn it into a prison. She learns that love should not be an altar where she sacrifices herself, but a space where they grow together. And with each discovery, she becomes more whole, more selective, more lucid. Until one day, without realizing it, she no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. That's when the world starts calling her cold, as if maturity were indifference, as if knowing one's own worth were arrogance. The men who once desired her now feel intimidated, because she no longer reacts to the game of conquest. She has seen too much, felt too much, cried too much to be charmed by pretty words. She wants presence, not promises. She wants consistency, not fleeting intensity. And that, for many, is scary. They want the beautiful woman, but not the awakened woman. They want companionship, but not depth. They want lightness, but not the weight of truth. She is the reflection of what every female soul becomes when it survives its own destruction. Not a victim, but a force that has learned to rise from the ashes. She now understands that being broken is not the end. It is the beginning of a new way of being. Because cracks allow light to enter, and where there is light, there is consciousness. Pain taught her what no love could, that a person's value is not in how much they are desired, but in how much they are able to remain true to themselves, even when the world tries to distort them. And when she looks at herself today, she does not see a broken woman, but a real woman, made of losses, but also of discoveries, of silences, but also of courage. She learned to walk alone, not because she wants to, but because she can. And that is the real revolution. To be enough without closing yourself off, to be whole without needing to be perfect, to be strong without ceasing to feel. A broken woman is not a wounded body. She is an awakened soul, And what many call coldness, she calls peace. She was beautiful, but there was something in her eyes that revealed what her mouth would never confess. A tired, almost imperceptible gleam, one that only those who have collapsed in silence recognize. On the outside, everything about her was harmony. The rehearsed smile, the firm posture, the controlled voice. But inside, there were invisible cracks, memories that still bled. She learned early on that the world rewards those who hide their pain well. So she became an expert at hiding what she felt, at appearing strong when everything inside screamed for rest. Men looked at her and saw only beauty, charm, mystery. They wanted to decipher her, conquer her, possess her. But few realized the weight she carried. They thought she was cold, unapproachable, even arrogant. They didn't know that coldness was just self-protection, a defense built on disappointment and abandonment. Every restrained gesture, every calculated silence was a way to survive. Because when she truly gave herself, the world responded with carelessness. And the woman who once believed in love, in care, in reciprocity, began to distrust even a kind look. She wasn't born that way. No woman is born distrustful, distant, or closed off. They become that way when they realize that giving themselves away comes at too high a price. When they realize that, in a world that idealizes them, few people really see them for who they are. Men said she was too intense, too sensitive, too difficult, but they never asked themselves what she had been through to become who she is. They preferred to romanticize her pain or blame her for not being lighthearted enough. Jung said that everything we deny in ourselves returns disguised as fate. And perhaps that was what she was experiencing, an unconscious repetition of loves that reproduced her old wounds. A woman broken inside does not need pity. She needs awareness. Because, contrary to what many think, she does not want to be saved. She wants to be seen. She wants someone to look beyond her appearance and perceive the depth of what she carries. The problem is that we live in a culture that confuses desire with presence. Men are drawn to her by the strength she exudes, but they flee when they realize that this strength was born of pain. They want the scent of the rose, but they can't stand the thorns. They want the soul, but they don't know how to deal with the darkness that comes with it. What they don't realize is that the woman broken inside has learned to read intentions. She senses when interest is superficial, when the gaze is hurried, when the promise has no substance. She has believed too much in pretty words. She has been hurt by arms that promised protection. Today she analyzes gestures, silences, attitudes, not because she is cynical, but because she had to mature in order not to die of naivety. Nietzsche said that those who have a why can face any how, and hers became simple. Never again allow anyone to destroy what little remains intact. There is a silent strength in women who have already touched the bottom of their own abyss. They are not easily charmed. They do not bow down for crumbs. They are not impressed by empty displays. They know that love without presence is temporary anesthesia. They know that promises do not heal old wounds. That is why they seem distant. But this distance is not arrogance. It is wisdom. They have learned that not every touch is caring, that not every company is shelter, and that sometimes being alone is healthier than insisting on someone who only wants a beautiful reflection to show off. The mistake many make is trying to heal her without knowing her. They want to be the cure when they barely understand the disease. They ignore that she has already risen from her own ruins more than once. She has cried until she was dry. She has begged for answers that never came. And when she realized that no one would come for her, she decided to be her own rescue. This did not make her cold, only lucid. Because the love she seeks now is no longer the kind that promises salvation, but the kind that offers truth. A love that is not frightened by the weight of her history, that does not try to simplify it, that stays when the enchantment dissipates and reality begins. She no longer wants to be admired. She wants to be understood. She wants someone who realizes that behind the beauty, there is a minefield of memories. That every smile has a cost. That every kind gesture bears the mark of someone who has learned to defend themselves. She does not seek perfection. She seeks presence. Because she understood that true connection is not born of fascination, but of the courage to remain when the masks fall. And it is precisely this awareness that makes her so dangerous to immature men, because she is not satisfied with little. She is not impressed by promises. She does not lose herself in illusions. She has lived long enough to know that love without truth is just emotional performance. And that's where many give up. Because to love a woman who has rebuilt herself is to confront one's own fear of depth. It is dealing with your own shadow. It is seeing in her eyes everything that you still run away from in yourself. But if a man can bear this truth, if he has the courage to cross the mirror and see beyond appearances, he will discover something rare. Because behind the scars there is a sensitivity so pure that it is frightening. A beauty that does not depend on makeup, but on presence. A kind of love that does not give itself easily, but when it does, it is absolute. And it is at this point that the broken woman ceases to be a wound and becomes a force. The transition from pain to lucidity is what separates those who survive from those who awaken. And she awoke, not to be admired, but to be whole. Now, what remains for the world is to learn to see her without wanting to fix her, because she already understands. There is nothing more beautiful than being true, even when it is frightening. She did not become cold by chance. It was time, rejection, and indifference that shaped in her a wisdom that few understand. Each wound became a warning, each loss a reminder. She learned that love is not a field of fantasy, but a mirror that reveals the limits of each person. And in that mirror, many men cannot bear their own reflection. Because when they approach a woman who has already gone through the hell of her own soul, they discover that she does not accept superficiality. She demands presence. She demands reciprocity. And that is frightening because few know how to truly love. When the broken woman awakens, she no longer seeks protection, she seeks a mirror. She wants to see in others the same level of awareness she has achieved in herself. And that is where relationships become true tests. Because to be with someone who has already faced their own shadow, you must have the courage to face yours. There is no more room for games, manipulation, or empty promises. She can sense from afar who speaks from the heart and who speaks to convince. The body may lie, but energy never lies. She recognizes the false even before hearing the words. And when she realizes it, she just walks away. Not out of pride, but out of self-preservation. She has learned that love should not be a battlefield, but neither is it a refuge where she hides from life. Mature love is a pact between two beings who have chosen to remain conscious, even when it hurts. It is the meeting between those who no longer seek completeness but partnership, and that is precisely why it is so rare. Most still confuse love with anesthesia. They want someone to relieve their loneliness, not to share their lucidity. They want emotion, but flee from intensity. They want lightness, but fear depth. And she, who has already been torn apart by illusion, prefers silence to shallow company. The men who observe her from afar feel something they cannot name. It is admiration, fear, curiosity, and desire mixed together. Because her beauty is not in her face, it is in her gaze that has seen too much, and yet remains open. It is in the calm voice of someone who has already screamed inside and survived. It is in the presence that does not need to prove anything. What they ignore is that this serenity is the result of a war won. A war against dependence, against neediness, against the need to be validated. Today, she doesn't need anyone to choose her. She chose herself. And that's the kind of power that isn't displayed, only felt. But there is something even deeper. Even after everything, she still believes in love. Not naive love, but the kind that comes from maturity. The love that knows how to wait, that respects time and understands that every human being is an entire universe. She believes in this love because she has become capable of offering it. Suffering did not destroy her, it purified her. It broke what was false, leaving only the essential. And now, anyone who wants to walk beside her must be willing to walk lightly, without masks, without fear of emotionally bearing themselves, because she accepts nothing less than the truth. That is why being with a woman like this is not a task for ordinary men. It is for those who are not intimidated by depth, who do not shy away from vulnerability. Men who understand that presence is more valuable than promises, that shared silence can be more intimate than 1,000 words, that loving someone who has already rebuilt themselves is, in fact, learning to rebuild yourself as well. She doesn't need saviors, but accomplices. And those who understand this discover something that few experience: the love that awakens, not the love that falls asleep. Some say she is difficult to love. She is not. She just does not let herself be loved any old way. Because what she carries now is a natural filter that separates the real from the illusory. And that, for those who live by appearances, is a threat. But for those who seek truth, it is an invitation. An invitation to dive in, to grow, to evolve together. She is not looking for perfection, but presence. And when she finds someone willing to stay even when the enchantment fades, she blossoms. And this blossoming is not for the other person. It is for herself, as living proof that the soul, even when wounded, can be reborn more beautiful than ever. The woman broken inside is the mirror of the world. She shows the cracks that everyone tries to hide. She is the living reminder that beauty and pain walk side by side, and that there is no greater power than transforming wounds into wisdom. Those who truly understand her will understand that loving someone like this is, above all, an act of courage. Because it is impossible to touch a deep soul without being transformed by it. What men ignore is that loving a woman who has rebuilt herself is also a rite of passage, the beginning of their own healing. If you feel the weight and truth of these words, show that you are ready for this journey. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and support this work with any amount. Write a word in the comments that sums up your decision to evolve. It can be consciousness, courage, or wholeness. Choose one and write it now. It is your silent pact with your own awakening.